Go ahead, have a seat. Find your sermon notes. Question at the top, right under the title. Question for you. If you could be anyone in the Bible, who would it be? Now, you can't pick Jesus, okay? Just saying. We're not going to be him. We want to act like him. We want to live like him. We want to love like him. That's really the point of our message today, but we're going to begin with humans like us, not God. So, if you could be anyone in the Bible, who would it be? Think of it for a moment. Now tell the person next to you your answer. Go ahead. Who would it be? All right, quiet bunch today. You all must be missing that hour of sleep. Okay. So a little audience participation today. I need some answers. So somebody shouted out, who would you be? Who was it over here? Eve. Oh, interesting. Come into my office, we'll do a little psychological study on that one. Oh, yeah, why not? I mean, perfection in the beginning, that would be pretty awesome. Seeing the creation, walking with God there in the garden, like it. All right, I heard another one over here. What was it over here? Somebody, anybody? Who was it? Ruth, okay, another great choice. Ruth. Mary. Which one? Mother, just not Magdalene. Oh, why not? Could be, yeah, there you go. All right, great choices. Need a couple more. Joseph. So Joseph the father or Joseph in the Old Testament? Father of Jesus. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? Seeing Jesus grow up. Very interesting as a carpenter. Yeah, we don't have much information at all about Jesus. Born, goes to Egypt, comes back. All of a sudden he's 12, then he's 30. Lots of gaps there. Would be very interesting. Couple more. Anybody? I'll give you some suggestions. Moses. There you go. Like that one. Moses. Paul. John. David. So we got, a lot of the heroes of the Bible. You've got Moses calling out Pharaoh. I think it would be pretty cool to have the magic stick and you could throw it down. It would be a snake. You'd be a real hit at parties, right? Part the Red Sea. Kind of fun. David, great king, known as a man after God's own heart. Pretty good title there. How about, I'm going to throw a couple of names out here. How about Jehoshaphat? Anybody want to be Jehoshaphat? I mean, you got a cool nickname, Jumpin' Jehoshaphat. Do you know who Jehoshaphat was? He was king of Judah. One of the few that actually was faithful in worship the true God. None of the kings of Israel did. They all went in their own direction. A lot of the kings of Judah as well, they kind of worshiped God, but they also worshiped Baal and some of the other idols. He tore down the idols. Don't hear a lot about him. How about Jethro? Not from the Beverly Hillbillies. Who is Jethro? Moses' father-in-law. That'd be pretty cool. He had a role. His role was to help Moses organize all the people there in the wilderness because they had lots of questions and they would come to him and wore him out. So Jethro helped him organize and delegate to others. How about this one? This one doesn't have a name that I'm aware of. How about the person, we don't know if it was a man or a woman, who provided the donkey for Jesus to ride into Jerusalem? Most of the time, if we have a choice, we want to emulate someone, it's the heroes of the Bible. The well-known, not the obscure. And it's probably because all of us deep down want to be great. We want life to be all about us. This morning, just to kind of give you an idea of when you got up this morning, probably not all of you, but most of you, who was the very first person that you thought about this morning? Probably me, not me, I mean you, right? And it's, I got to, get up, it's early, I got to get to church. Tomorrow morning when you wake up, again, it's probably going to be, how am I going to get myself to work, get myself to school? It's just our nature. We want life to be about us. And this is nothing new. It's been since the beginning of time. And it's nothing new here in our gospel for today either. We know the story. The mother of the sons of Zebedee, this is Salome, she came to Jesus. And she comes with her sons and she kneels and she asks, and he says, what do you want? And she says, say that these two sons of mine are to sit, one at your right, one at your left in your kingdom. Salome recognizes that Jesus is someone special. And they believe that he's going to be great. He's going to be the king. He's going to overthrow the Romans. And he's going to have this wonderful, amazing, powerful earthly kingdom. And like any mother, she wants the best for her sons. And so she makes this request. Jesus, you can do this. When you come into power, don't forget James and John. Right? Moms don't pray for their babies to grow up to be mediocre, right? That could be a country western song. Yeah? They want them to be great. If your kids are on the basketball team, you don't want them sitting on the end of the bench eating popcorn. You want them in the game. You want them to score the winning basket. In the orchestra, you don't want to be the second or third fiddle. You want to be the lead. You want to be the soloist. We want the spotlight to be on us. Truly, we want people to not only like us, but need us and want us. And in fact, if we really had our own way, we would want others to want to be us. That is the way that we are wired. Now, do you remember in the gospel for today, Jesus doesn't address Salome, the mom, because he knows the request is really from James and John. So he doesn't address her, but he says to them, can you drink from the cup? In other words, are you prepared for what this takes to be great? Can you make the sacrifice that I'm going to make? And say, sure, yeah, we can do that. Of course we can. And it's kind of like his response is kind of like to what he said to the Roman soldiers when they crucified him. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. I can imagine to James and John, it's Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're asking for. Indeed, they are going to suffer, but they have no idea what this means. So they want to be important. They want to be great. But our point today is that what we want and what Jesus wants are really two entirely different things. Even our definitions of greatness are different. So we pick up the story here. Jesus called to them and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles, so the people of the world, they lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them. It shall not be so among you. You're going to be different. But whoever would be great among you must be your servant. You might want to circle that word, servant, there in your notes. And whoever would be first must be your slave. Put some stars around that one. Even as the Son of Man, that's Jesus' name for himself, came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. So again, the question, do you want to be great? Do you want to be important? Jesus says that true greatness doesn't come by telling people how great you are. And we can beat our chests and we can tell everybody, look at me, look at how wonderful I am. That does not make us great. Nor does true greatness come by demanding the spotlight. Now, the spotlight may come, and there's nothing wrong with that, because God gives us all talents and abilities. And that sometimes means being in the spotlight. Sometimes that means leading, but doing it out of humility. Nor is greatness about the title that you have. And finally, it doesn't come from the 3 P's, we can call them: power, or prestige, or even our position. None of that is greatness. Jesus says it simply comes from being a servant. It comes from looking to the needs of others first. It comes from having a servant's heart, which means that someone else is your master. It means that we value others more than ourselves. And yeah, a lot of times our first thought is what we need to do, but hopefully you're also thinking about how you can serve others. As parents, you know this. You're thinking about your kids, how we can prepare them. And not just the little things, getting them ready physically for school. You got to get them dressed, got to get them fed, got to get them out the door, got to get them in the car, got to get them to school on time. But how do we prepare them for their life? The values that we give to them. So being a servant is thinking not only of the needs, but also the dreams of others above our own. It's when you get a job opportunity, husband or wife, and you think of how it affects your family before you climb the ladder of success. Or where you're going to move or live, where the schools are going to be, what Lutheran church you're going to go to. Those kinds of things. Now, Jesus says it's not only about being a servant, but takes it even one step further, doesn't he? And he says if you truly want to be first, if you truly want to be the great us, don't just be a servant thinking about the needs of others, but you need to be a slave, where you lose your identity in yourself. Now, I want you to think with me for just a moment. Go back about 150 years. Put yourself on a slave ship traveling from Africa to America. Think about the shackles. Think about the suffering. Probably the closest that we can get here in America in understanding what Jesus voluntarily did. For those slaves that came to America, came against their will. They were sold. Jesus voluntarily left the glory of heaven and humbled himself as a slave to his master, his Father. And he gave up all the glory, the praise of the angels, emptied himself of his godliness, was born as a human being. And even when he came into his ministry, he was ridiculed. Can you imagine his very first sermon that he preached in his hometown? He was kicked out of what we would call a church today, nearly stoned to death. Even after he gathered his group of disciples and taught them for 3 years, they didn't understand what he was all about. Most of them deserted him in his time of need. His own countrymen said, "Crucify him." He was beaten, nailed to a cross, and he died willingly as a slave, where he said, "Your needs are more important than his own." He did all of that just so we could have a relationship with his master, our Heavenly Father, and have an eternal relationship with him. I want to tell you another little story about what love looks like humanly, and then as we can build on that to understand the love of Jesus. Here's a little story about a 3-year-old girl. She loves her mommy. She climbs up into her mommy's lap, and she says just that, "Mommy, I love you." And then to show her mom, she took every part of her face, and she would put her finger on it. So it's, "Mommy, I love your nose." And, "Mommy, I love your chin." And, "Mommy, I love your ear." And then she fondled her hair and she said, "Mommy, I love your hair." And she held her whole face, "Mommy, I love your face." And then she kind of changed directions and she asked, "Mommy, can you show me your heart?" And the mom didn't really know what to do with that. So she thought about it. And she said, "All right, look into my eyes and look deep down. And if you look hard enough, you can see my heart." So you imagine the little 3-year-old girl, she's getting right up in mommy's face, right up there in her eyes, she's squinting, she's looking and she's looking and she's looking, and she goes, "Mommy, I'm looking as hard and as deep as I can. But all I can see is myself." The reflection in her eye. That's what love is. That's how you know that someone really, really loves you. When you can look into their eyes and you can look deep inside of them, and all that you see is yourself. Because you are the most important person to them. If you really want to know what love is, just look into the eyes of Jesus. And when you do that, you will see yourself. You will see that Jesus died for you. Jesus suffered for you. Jesus became a slave, putting your needs and your dreams above his own. Paul says in the book of 1 Corinthians, in that 13th chapter, love is patient and love is kind. It doesn't envy, it doesn't boast, it keeps no record of wrong. It is not self-seeking. It's selfless. And though we will never do it perfectly, we'll never be exactly like Jesus. But there are all these characters of the Bible that we can emulate, where they have great characteristics. And all of them love their Lord. I guess if I were to pick someone, I would probably choose Barnabas from the book of Acts. Paul was the up-and-comer, the rising star in the emerging Christian church. Really surpassed Barnabas. His role was simply to encourage Paul. Is there someone in your life that you could encourage, that you could love? Think of that person now, and maybe they're sitting right next to you. And if it's appropriate, look deep into their eyes and see if you see yourself, because they love you. And now find someone else this week and encourage them and love them as well.